What is this? Contra? With a storyline? In dialogue? In cinematics? In a life bar? In checkpoints? What am I looking at? What did they do to my Contra? Did they my childhood again? You know what? It's way forward, so I'll check it out. They haven't steered me wrong yet, so hey, let's roll the intro. Alright, good to see you again. You doing okay, kid? Of course you are. You're still breathing and you're above ground, so of course you're having a good day. For the icing on the cake, you're about to watch another first impressions video by me, Screwface Capone, the gaming mobster. How lucky are you, right? Anyway, if you guys watched my 20 for 2024 from earlier this year, you'll know Contra Operation Galuga, which is Konami's remake of the first Contra game, was one of the many games I had my eye on, and it's finally here. Now, I'm wary about any new Konami product these days, but credit where it's due, they know when to capitalize off their back catalog. Hell, a couple of years ago, they bought back an obscure Famicom game. Also, this game was developed by WayForward, and if you're familiar with them, you already know that they bring the goods when it comes to classic 2D action. In fact, you're behind 2007's awesome Contra 4, so it's not like this is even their first rodeo when it comes to Contra. So of course, I'm going to give this game a shot. Now the first thing you'll notice about Operation Galuga is that it opens with a cutscene explaining the mission. Contra was never known for having a deep storyline. You just grab your gun and start blasting anything that moves that isn't you. If you're a longtime fan like me, this might feel a bit off. I don't mind it though. The game is still about blasting anything that moves, but the story's just here to explain why you're blasting at anything that moves. Of course, it does take a somewhat weird turn toward the middle, but then again, you're not going to care while you're blowing things up. I'm not going to spoil anything, but the ending does a good job of setting up a sequel. The main campaign mode is for up to 2 players. There's also an arcade mode, which removes the story sequences, and this is for up to 4 players. Along with these modes, you also get a challenge mode, in which players can compete several mini-missions to see how well they can do. These mini-missions include speed runs, survival, and even missions where you have limited ammo. You get 5 playable characters during the game's story, although 3 of them have to be unlocked. You start out with good old Lance and Bill, and you unlock a local guerrilla known as Ariana, an operative known as Lucia, and finally there's Stanley, a badass in a mech suit who shows up late in the game. There are slight differences between each character's playstyle. For instance, Bill, Lance, and Ariana can double jump, while Lucia and Stanley can use a grappling hook to attach themselves to the ceiling. Some characters also have a slide maneuver, while others can do a dash maneuver. Certain characters also have different effects with certain weapons. For instance, when Lucia picks up the spread gun, it instead turns into a wave shot that can be charged. There are even more playable characters in the game, but these can only be used in the arcade mode. 2 of them are the protectors from the European releases of Contra. There are even more that you can unlock. I'm not going to spoil anything, but if you're a longtime fan of this series, you can probably guess who at least one of them are. If you played Contra before, then you already know how this game plays. In case you don't, then you, along with up to 3 of your friends, run and gun throughout each stage. You blast at everything that moves by way of your gun that you can aim in every direction. If a pod floats by, you can blast it to get a weapon. Enemies will be rushing at you from all sides, so you'll need to be quick on the draw to take them down. Of course, Operation Galuga throws a few wrinkles into the formula. As I mentioned earlier, your characters have new abilities such as dashes and double jumps. Also, like Contra 3, and virtually every game since, you can hold a weapon in each hand, and when you lose a life, you only lose the weapon that you had in your hand at the time of your death. By collecting the same weapon twice, you can upgrade it. Sadly, the upgrade ends once you get hit. By holding down a button, you can sacrifice your current weapon and trigger what's called an overload, in which you activate a special ability that's tied to your weapon. For instance, Doing this with your machine gun activates a barrier, and doing this with a homing missile activates a drone. During the game, you earn credits which you can spend in the in-game shop to buy perks. These perks include starting with a certain weapon, extra lives, and new abilities for certain characters. It's not a roguelike, and you can only equip 2 perks before each mission, but still, it can help make things easier. By the way, this is also where you're going to go to unlock the additional characters I mentioned. Of course, you have to beat the game first before you can access them. Before you start a new game, you'll have the choice of choosing a classic one-shot kill or a life bar along with the difficulty level. That's right, a life bar. You also get mid-level checkpoints, so if you lose all your lives during a level, then you'll be able to start at that checkpoint. Life bar, mid-level checkpoints, upgrades, in a Contra game? What is this? You kids these days. Nah, I'm just messing with ya. While Operation Galuga is a bit easier than past Contra games, that isn't saying a whole lot. The game is still intense and you need to be careful with how you move, because life bar or not, you could be on your back with the quickness if you aren't careful. Thing is, the gameplay tweaks make things less frustrating, and you're less likely to throw your controller at the wall while playing on normal. So the difficulty isn't so much from tons of enemies running at you and one-shot kills, as much as it is getting you to make use of your skill set, if that makes sense. There are lots of callbacks not only to first Contra, but other games throughout the franchise, provided you can keep your eyes open. The bosses are what you'd expect from a Contra game, and they also pay homage to the franchise's history. I like the first level's boss and how it flipped the formula a little bit. Not only do you fight 2 versions of the gate boss from the first level of Contra, but you also fight a version of the boss in level 2. Of course, as you progress through the game, things get more bizarre looking as the alien aspect of the storyline takes center stage, just like in past Contra games. The soundtrack was okay. It contains remixes of classic Contra tunes. To be honest, I didn't like it as much as I did past entries, but thankfully, once you beat the game, you can unlock multiple alternative soundtracks in the in-game shop that I mentioned earlier. So, should you play Contra Operation Galuga? Yes, especially if you're an old school Contra fan. It's got that classic Contra shoot 'em up gameplay that you grew up with, and it's approachable for new players. While it might not be as brutal as older games in the series, it's still going to give you a challenge. If you're a stickler for that sort of thing, you can always turn up the difficulty and turn the one-hit kills back on. The unlockables add some replay value too. While this might not be a new beginning for the franchise, it does a great job reminding old fans why they fell in love with the series, while still being welcoming to new fans. Well, that was it for this video. If you made it this far, I want you to do me a favor. Go to the comments and tell me the name of your favorite Contra title. Mine is Contra 3: The Alien Wars. If you're new to this channel, by the way, welcome. I like to cover retro games, indie titles, and gaming-related hardware. You'll see everything from documentaries, to lists, to live streams, and first impressions like the one you just saw. If that sounds good to you, and you want to join the Mafia, hit that big red subscribe button, and I'll make you a made man. In fact, if you want to do me one better, hit that bell icon, and once I drop new content, you'll get the word straight from the Don himself. Speaking of Konami franchises, it's been a while since we last got a new Castlevania game. If you want something to tide you over in the meantime, I did a couple of videos of games that are kinda, sorta, reminiscent of Castlevania. If you want to watch them, it just popped up on your screen. Anyway, enjoy the rest of your week, and I'm outie 51,000G, y'all.